Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight on becoming a lawyer after college. My guest today is Robert Rothenberg, and he's from Rothenberg Associates, right?
That's correct.
All right, so welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So Rob, I usually start my guests where they went to school. So where did you go to college?
So I went to Lehigh University. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, and at some point in time when it was time to look at colleges, Lehigh was a good choice for me.
Oh, great. So going back in time, we're going to go back into high school. When did you start thinking about going to college? Is it freshman year? Is it senior year? When did this whole thing start about?
So the thought process for college was really when I was a child. My parents, who are now deceased, were both highly educated, and as a result of that, college was always something that it was almost an expectation in my family. So early on, I studied hard, and in high school as well, and college was something that we had always aspired to.
Okay, so did it start sophomore year, junior year? When did you start thinking about it? I know everyone starts as a child, but
I think in high school, I was taking some higher level classes for the goal of going to college and also getting some credits for AP, for example, AP classes, for getting some credits towards college. So I'd say probably junior year.
Junior year. Okay, and now now you're from Brooklyn, so Lehigh is nowhere near Brooklyn. So how did you start picking a school like Lehigh? Did you go to multiple schools? Or?
Yeah, so my recollection is that, and this is going back a little while, that we kind of drew kind of a geographic map of colleges and universities that I would be interested in. At that time, I had a business and accounting interest.
Okay.
And we kind of drew a map and visited lots of schools, with my parents on weekends or during the week over the summer.
Yeah.
And we took tours, and we were looking really geographically of kind of a 2-3 hour radius, as well as size of school for colleges and universities. I wanted a mid-sized school, not too large and not too small.
Okay, so some of the states would be what, Connecticut,
we basically,
Massachusetts?
I'd say Connecticut for myself, and again, I had grown up in Brooklyn. We were living there at that time. For me, it was Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York was kind of the 4 states that we were primarily looking at,
okay,
as well as some Massachusetts schools.
So now, was Lehigh just out and about? That was it, or were there other schools that were in the running?
There were a couple. Well, so I applied to, and I'm approximately half a dozen to a dozen schools at that time. Did very well. Got accepted to, I think, all of them except one Ivy League school that will remain unmentioned. I think I'm still on their wait list in Pennsylvania. And then we kind of narrowed it from, even on the application process, there was, as you're familiar with, kind of some safety schools, some reach schools, and then some schools that we felt that I'd fit in very well. Lehigh was one of the schools we felt I would fit in very well. After getting a number of acceptances, we narrowed it down and determined that Lehigh would kind of fit my needs, both academically and otherwise.
Okay. Now, was there any kind of financial situation as well, or any school was open to all of that?
I think there's always financial considerations. I was fortunate enough to, my dad and mom both worked and earned a decent salary. So we were fortunate enough that that was not a major decision component, the tuition and so forth. And back when I was in school, which was graduated high school in '77,
wow,
tuition was a little less back then than it is today.
Sure.
So fortunately, the tuition itself was a consideration, but not a determining factor.
Right.
I think with today's parents, that's probably much more relevant just because of the cost of education.
Yeah. Okay. So now you're at Lehigh. You get to school there. When did you start thinking about, I could become a lawyer?
So that also is probably when I was a child. My dad was a lawyer and practiced for many, many years. and he also had an accounting background. So it was kind of from a young age, I understood what a lawyer does and had an interest. That interest kind of sparked further in at Lehigh and in college because I had taken a number of classes, including some pre-law classes dealing with contracts and other facets of the law, and it kind of stimulated me from an academic standpoint. Okay. So I'd say probably in my junior year at Lehigh, that became a much more relevant thought, and the process of going to law school became more prevalent.
So what are some of the requirements to become a lawyer, just to go to college? I mean, what kind of grades is Lehigh looking at?
Right.
You know,
So,
even at that time, they're still probably in the same range.
right. So, well, although people say I'm not sure I could get into Lehigh today, if I was applying now, but so Lehigh is a very academically challenging school. To get into Lehigh, obviously I had to do well on my SAT tests. I did very well in grades, and I think as most schools, they also look at extracurricular kind of activities. Okay. So in high school, I did all of those things. I studied for my exam, I did well grade-wise, and I did some other extracurricular activities. So I think any school, Lehigh or any school that someone applies to, is going to look at those factors in the acceptance determination. Okay. Once I was at Lehigh, I don't want to say I was a nerd because I don't think I was, but I studied. Lehigh was challenging. I did study a lot. Mm-hmm. It was competitive, and I did well in my classes, grade-wise. At some point, with regard to pursuing a law degree or going to law school, you have to take other exams, the LSAT, LSAT. So I took a class and did well in that, and then applied to law school, I believe probably in my senior year.
Okay, so now in college, what are some of the classes that a lawyer takes or a pre-law student takes? Right. What are some of those classes?
So I don't think there's any set rules on that. Often. So for me, I was in the business school, and I took a lot of finance and accounting type of classes, not required for law school. Other schools or other people often take governmental classes or politics or things like that. But there's no rhyme or reason. Someone could be in an engineering school, someone could be in a business school, and someone could be in an arts direction. And they make a determination to go to pursue law school for any number of reasons. But for me, I was kind of in a business mentality, and there were a couple of pre-law classes dealing with contracts specifically. And I also took a number of psychology classes that I enjoyed. Wow. So that was kind of my direction, but I don't think there's any set rules as to pursuing a law degree, what you should take in college.
So is public speaking a big thing in becoming a lawyer?
I think it is critical. And that's a great question because most people, one of their greatest fears is public speaking. And I think the earlier you learn how to do that and feel relatively comfortable doing it, the better you are, whether that's in high school. Yeah. And many high schools have both classes relating to public speaking as well as extracurricular opportunities for public speaking. Same thing in college. There are classes for public speaking. There's also outside opportunities. Yeah. So I think one of the things as a lawyer, one of the skills that you have is the ability to speak in front of other people and hopefully do that in a fashion that is comfortable and persuasive.
So do you have to present a lot of different reports and things like that at the college level? Is that where you get your public speaking?
So for myself, the answer is yes. There were a number of classes that I had taken where we may have done a research assignment, and then you get in front of the class and report on your findings or your research.
I gotcha.
So the answer is kind of yes, not, and I think that is very school specific or even class specific. Yeah. But public speaking was fairly common either in front of the class or at least, participating in the discussion on a regular basis in class.
Okay, so now you get to senior year of college. You take the LSAT. That's a requirement to go to law school. Correct. So what are some of the grades that you need on that LSAT to go? Is it a low grade, a high grade?
So I think the answer is it depends on what law school you want to go to. So it's similar to college, and law schools are very similar. It's a competitive industry. I think the better you perform, the more likely you're going to be accepted at a higher level law school. Okay. That doesn't mean that, going to, just like in college, it doesn't mean that if you're not going to Harvard, it doesn't mean that you're not going to go to a good school and do well. It doesn't mean if you don't go to Harvard Law that you're not going to be a great lawyer. So there's really opportunities for everybody, whether you're the best student or you're just an okay student. Yeah. So there's a place for you at the law school levels. Some, again, are, there's Harvard Law, and then there's other law schools, without mentioning names, that are perhaps a lesser level. Okay. I went to Brooklyn Law School, which is a very good school, competitive school, certainly not considered a Harvard Law. And I think, again, there's opportunities for any person. You want to do the best you can in the exams. You want to have the best grades. And then, I think anywhere you go, there's going to be opportunities for you as a lawyer, regardless of what school you're going to.
So now, how many years is law school?
So that's an excellent question, because traditionally it was always a 3-year program. Wow. So I went to Brooklyn Law School 3 years full-time after college. And you're taking, full set of 5 classes, 15 credits a semester at Brooklyn Law School. One of the movements, or at least the discussions that are taking place in the law industry, the law education industry, is perhaps going to a program which is less than 3 years. Either really? 2 years is being discussed, where it's more intense for that time period, or perhaps they're not teaching as much classroom things, but more practical things. So there's been kind of movements to the accreditation that is, I guess, in discussion currently.
Wow. So now, while in law school, what are some of the classes that you're taking? What are they teaching you to become a lawyer?
So in the first year, which is the most difficult, you're taking kind of the basic core curriculum, and that would include, by way of an example, a contract class, a civil litigation class, evidence is also taught, personal injury, torts, those kind of basic classes. And then as you go further, you may have some electives that are much more specific. Brooklyn Law School was a little unique in that they certainly encouraged practical implications of what you've learned in things like clinics. So you wouldn't typically do that in the first year, but you might do that in subsequent years where you're actually in a working environment and learning something in a court setting or at the prosecutor's office or for Legal Aid Society or something like that. But go ahead.
And is that a lot of experience that you're taking in school? So let's say, are you going to the prosecutor's office? Are you going to different cases and learning at those locations?
So I think that depends on the law school, and I think it depends on the individual.
Okay.
At some point in law school, I started working part-time at a personal injury law firm in Manhattan. Okay. So I was getting kind of hands-on experience, not for credit, but for compensation. And I was getting hands-on experience in my second and third year of law school in a real law firm environment.
Okay.
But just going back to the first year, I kind of remember a couple things very specifically. There's a lot of reading. And one of the, so you're reading cases typically. You're reading cases that illustrate certain facts and certain areas of the law. Yeah. And I remember thinking, because as I indicated before, Lehigh was competitive. I did a lot of work. I studied hard. I enjoyed reading in general. Whatever reading I did at Lehigh or elsewhere was nothing compared to law school. And it wasn't just because of the volume of what you were reading, it was because of the intellectual challenges it presented. So what I mean very specifically, and I always remember this because I just remember reading a case and sometimes reading it again and again, and it would literally take me 2 hours to read 3 pages of a law case.
Oh my God.
Now again, that's just year one when you're really clueless. So in year one, it's a new experience, and the whole process is different than what you kind of were trained to do in college.
Yeah.
So I kind of remember it being very tedious reading. It wasn't like reading a novel or a magazine. It was kind of very intense reading.
Wow. So now, what happens when you graduate from law school? Do you take the bar as soon as you graduate? What actually happens?
So again, at Brooklyn Law, it was a 3-year program, and most law schools in the country are still 3-year programs. So you basically graduate from your law school, and then you have to take a bar exam, generally specific to that state. So I had, it's a 2-day exam that I took for New York, and I also had decided to take for New Jersey at that same time. So that was a day 3.
Whoa.
And they're pretty intense exams, New York being considered one of the harder ones in the state. So they have what's called a multi-state portion, which is 1 day, which is applied and given throughout the country. And then they have another day, a separate exam specific to that state. So New York had their own state, and I don't want to misquote, but I think it covers either 17 or 21 different legal areas, from evidence to contracts to criminal law to torts and so forth. So it's a pretty grueling study and also pretty grueling exam. My recollection is after I had graduated from law school in May, the bar exam may have been at the end of the summer, and most of my fellow students and I took a full-time course. For June and July, you just studied every day, 8 hours a day or more. You went to the class for 4 hours or 6 hours, and then you studied, after that for the remaining portion of the day, and you did that again the next day until you took the exam.
So now, finance-wise, are your parents still paying for all of this? I mean, college, law school, the bar exam. Is this all cost money?
It costs a lot of money. So again, a good question. Again, I was fortunate to have parents who were, well off and could support me in my educational desires and needs. Today, however, so interesting, the law school applications are on the decline. And there's a couple reasons for that, but the studies and articles have shown that one of the reasons is because of the cost of going to law school and I guess the cost benefit analysis.
Wow.
So law school today for 1 year costs, tuition is probably in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $55,000, plus room and board and food and so forth. So you could be spending per year $50,000 to $70,000 for law school for a 3-year total of, let's say, $150,000 to $200,000
on top of your college career,
which you're already in debt for. So one of the reasons the applications process is on the decline is because people are looking at that and saying, wow, I'm already in debt with college. I'm going to be more in debt now for law school. Yeah. When does it start making sense? When do I start getting the benefits?
Yeah.
The answer is you probably get the benefits as soon as you get a job,
right.
But whether it makes sense, I think is an individual thing, and you'd have to kind of weigh what the likelihood of your salary is going to be over time to what it would be if you didn't go to law school.
And the bar exam, what is the bar exam?
That costs a couple $100 is my recollection.
And if you fail, you just keep on paying?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to pass on my first try, but I did have a very good friend who failed twice before passing his third time.
Wow.
So, yes, there's an expense, but I think there's more of a stressful situation of, other people pass and you're still trying.
And now, is it something where it takes a matter of time to even study again for something like that?
Yeah, so typically if you had failed the first time, you'd kind of take a refresher class to kind of or do
So
something
it could
different.
take a couple of months, a couple of years, depending
Yeah,
on.
so my friend who had failed, unfortunately, twice, it took him probably about 6 months. The bar exam's not given
Every day.
every day, so it's given at different intervals. I don't really recall, but it might be 2 or 3 times a year.
Wow.
So he had to take it the next time and so forth.
So now, going into after the bar exam and you're passing the bar exam, how do you start your own law firm? I mean, that's what you're doing now, right?
That is what I do. I have my own law firm with my wife. But the answer really is at some point in law school, probably your last year, you start looking for a job. And it's like any other job search, Anthony, in that, you think about what you want to do and where you want to do it, and then who you need to interact with to get that type of job. So, in your senior year in law school, I sent out probably 123 letters and resumes to different employers, law firms in particular, and probably got back 122 rejections.
Wow.
Now, my situation was a little unique. That's unusual in the sense that when I was in my last year of law school, I always had a tax background and an accounting and business background. So I ended up applying at some point to NYU, to New York University School of Law, for an LLM in taxation. NYU has probably the best, if not one of the best programs in the country for a Master's of Law in Taxation. So I applied not thinking that I was going to get in. I did well at Brooklyn Law School, but I wasn't the best student. And as it turned out, I got accepted to NYU, to the LLM program, which is the Masters of Law in Taxation. And then once I got that, I decided to accept it because it was, it was something that I decided it was worth pursuing. So I ended up going to another year. That was 1 year full-time after law school. So we spent a lot of money on education, but it was well worth it.
Yeah. Now, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, where do they go to find a lawyer like yourself?
So they would contact me if they have any questions. They could contact me at my office number, which is 609-452-9599, and I'd be happy to guide a young person in their endeavors.
Great. And how many years have you been in business?
So I had initially started at a law firm in Pennsylvania. So I ended up having to take another bar exam when I got my first job in Pennsylvania, because I love taking bar exams. And then I started my own law firm in 1987 with my wife, approximately.
Wow.
And, we do a variety of areas of law, but I primarily do real estate and business law.
Wow, that's fantastic. Great. Well, so just encompassing everything. I mean, it's a lot of education that you need to become a lawyer, or else don't switch states. Is that basically it?
That is basically it. Except again, there's a movement literally in the last month to have a uniform bar exam.
Wow.
So this is a very timely conversation in that several states have already moved in that direction, and New Jersey has literally just voted on doing something like that, where each state would not have a unique and different bar exam. There'd be a uniform bar exam throughout the country that if you passed, you would be able to practice in those other states. And the reason they did that is because of the world we live in today.
Sure.
So many people go and move, and society is such that you may have clients in multiple states or other states. So hopefully you won't have to take as many bar exams as I did.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we're coming to the end of our show, and usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there that their sons and daughters are they want to become a lawyer, they want to go on to college. What advice do you want to give to those parents?
So I think advice to the parents, and maybe even more appropriately to the student, is in life you need or should do what you want to do, what you're going to enjoy. So, and sometimes it takes a while to figure that out, whether it's college, law school, 10 years after you graduated law school, or 30 years after you graduated college, people are still trying to figure it out. But I think the advice I would give is, do what you want, do what you're going to enjoy, because you're going to be doing it for a long time. The other advice I gave someone the other day about law school, I was talking to the parent who I have a relationship with through youth sports. He told me his daughter wanted to, was considering going to law school. And what did I think about that? And quite frankly, I think having a law degree, whether you go and have your own law firm or not, is a valuable degree that you could use in any industry, in any employment situation. So whether you are actually a lawyer in other industries, or if you just have your law degree, it helps you in the analytical thinking mind that is so important in today's society.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.